My dear friends, welcome to our forum. A friend and a diplomat, Francesco Sambiasi in China, 1610 to 1649. And our speaker for tonight is Francesco Bosila. He's an art historian based in Florence, Italy. He has a PhD in history of architecture from the Università di Firenze. He's a member of the board and president of the Società di Studi Giuseppe Castiglione, the Society of Jesus, Langshening, named after the great Jesuit artist in China and founded in 2014. He's a member of the Matteo Ricci Institute. He's mostly teaching classes for Gonzaga University in Florence. Professor Francesco Bosila has published mostly on resonance philosophy of art, resonance sculpture, resonance ceramics, and the history of Italian museums. He has focused his most recent books and articles in Michelangelo as well as in Giuseppe Castiglione S.J. Without further ado, we'll ask Professor Francesco Sambiasi to share with us around 45 or 50 minutes, followed by question and answers after that. Welcome, Francesco Bosila, to give us the forum for today. Welcome.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you, if you can hear me well enough. I'd like to thank you for having me once again, both in present. Last time we were saying before, I was in Macau in 2018, or on video. Unfortunately, in the last years, there's only been video presentations, but during this time, I started to work on some other figures of Jesuit missionary, other than Giuseppe Castiglione, other figures of missionaries in China. And one of those was Francesco Sambiasi. I really hope that after this 47 minutes of my intervention, we could have a discussion, because I really would like to hear your impressions on this historical figure. So, without further waiting, I will switch to the PowerPoint. So, I started composing my research on the Italian Jesuit Francesco Sambiasi in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, together with my wife and research partner, Jian Janin. In fact, in providing me with a unique opportunity for collecting Chinese sources regarding Italian Jesuits working in Ming, China. My endeavor was to mentally envision scenarios that in Italy are known only to specialists. To this knowledge remains confined, as existing information is either presented in a superficial or overly eulogistic manner, leaving the broader public unaware of many intriguing aspects. The comparison between Western and Chinese references on Francesco Sambiasi, sometimes only with episodic notes, motivated me to dedicate a book to this missionary. My hope is to create a historically acceptable work that delves into the life of a Jesuit who engaged in relentless cultural mediation with the Ming dynasty. Instead of a mere biography, the book and even this conference will present Sambiasi's profile through episodes. Sambiasi is an emblematic figure for the times we live in, I think, considering the fear of wars, poverty, and global diseases that we are experiencing today. His life was characterized by courage, which was tempered by the purpose of his mission to truly connect with Chinese people, following in the steps of Ignazio, Francesco Saverio, and Matteo Ricci. The proclamation of a new dynasty at Beijing on 30 October 1644 did not change the Jesuit strategy all at once. Johann Adam Schall von Bell was the first to present his scientific abilities to the Qin of the House of Aijinjoro. It was only after the late 1650s that the Qing showed to be victorious in the south or in the coastal areas infested by maritime warlords. Between 1644 and 1649, Sambiasi was active as an advisor and ambassador for the Nanmin, Hongguan, Longhu, and Yonle. With Longhu, Zhu Yuzhen, Sambiasi had established a sincere friendship when Yuzhen was imprisoned by his relative, the Shenzhen Emperor, as I will say later. In 1932, Father Pfister published a missive that Longhu wrote to Sambiasi, penned in Fuzhou on August 24, 1645. I could not find the original text at the Arzi of Roma. Here are Longhu's unique words, which I translated from Pfister French, to English. I felt the urge to accept the government of the empire. You have known me for 20 years. I had sworn to recover provinces once belonging to my ancestors, and I will use all my strength for the good of my people. You, my old friends, come and advise me on what to do. 3 times I've written you to come to me. As of now, I'm raising you to the rank of grand military official. Then my proposal is to give you the important post of ambassador. What do you think? Continue to love me, advise me, bring some relief to my heart. Of my reign, the first year, the 4th day of the first moon. I think that very rarely we find in the history of Society of Jesus in China a document of this weight, of this caliber. Amid the war, Sambiasi built a large church in Guangzhou after 1646. Wounded by the Manchu soldiers in the siege of the city 1649, during his last months of grief for a China that was lost, Father Francesco understood that the glorious color of diplomatic privilege was truly provisional and relative. Let's go back in time and let's note that, to my knowledge, we do not have a portrait of the Calabrian aristocrat Francesco Sambiasi, who was born in Cosenza, Italy, 1582. In China, he took the courtesy names of Bi Jinliang and Bi Fanji. These are the names that we find in the Chinese documents. Yet he was mentioned and described by Chinese literati such as Mao Xiang, who received a gift by Sambiasi, a precious Western textile that Mao finally donated to the famous beauty and courtesan Dong Bai. During the 17th century, the generation of Jesuits who followed Matteo Ricci continued to work to aid converts to build a truly Chinese Catholic Church. To this aim, Sambiasi shared the political and existential drama of his friends on a stage of social chaos. Hence, he found himself on the intersection of relations with nonconformist men and women, such as the Ming loyalist philosopher, scientist, and painter, Fang Yizhi. This is a 19th century or even 20th century depiction of Fang Yizhi as a Buddhist abbot. Thanks to Fan, we have a picture of Sambiasi. They had met near Nanjing. Around 1635, Fan recorded that because of the contemporary political turmoil, his consolation were the suggestive conversation with Master Bi Jinliang. This wise foreigner was good at talking, even in Chinese dialects. I do not know where Master came from. He's tall and slender, looks like a celestial being, good at talking, even in dialects. His clothing is different from a Buddhist monk. He knows how to calculate tens of thousands of miles. He tried to explain thousands of years of things. I hate this suffering life in the South. Hence, I got along with him, and I've asked him about the philosophy of heaven. Fang was a member of the Revival Association, the Fouché, which called for a reform of society. The first aim of such scholarly associations was, quote, to make friends by means of literature. Fang was impressed by Sambiasi's knowledge and touched by his efforts to learn the local dialects. Sambiasi possessed the mental disposition and charisma Fan implies to integrate himself into the daily reality of his Chinese friends, despite being not a Buddhist master. Erudition and conversion, we understand, were intertwined and cemented by mutual trust. The brilliant and impetuous Fang was concentrated on bridging Han medicine with Western novelties. He mentioned both Ricci and Sambiasi in a collection of essays, notes from a study room called Ziyu. The Western scholar Matteo Ricci traveled across the oceans to come to China. Amongst the Chinese books he had read, he admired Confucius the most. Ricci served God as he was good at mathematics. He also knew mechanical engineering and was of extraordinary intelligence. He wrote a book named First Collection of Writings on Heavenly Learning. I have studied this book and many things I did not understand. I remember that when I was a little boy, I visited Uncle Xiaoming Yu with my father in Jiangxi, and I asked him about Ricci's book. At that time, Master Sambiasi was in the south. I paid a visit to Master Sambiasi and asked him questions about mathematics and mechanical engineering. Yet he was unwilling to explain such matters in detail. They asked him about heaven or what is beyond the secular, and he was happy to answer. Therefore, I came to understand that the book title, The Seven Scenes, and the Western theology were truly difficult. Fan is mentioning here the scholar Xiaoming Yu, who, supplemented by Jesuit sources between 1620 and 1648, confirmed the sphericity of the earth. Diego de Pantoja, of course, wrote the seven scenes that Fang evokes. In essence, the encounter between Sambiasi and Fang was concentrated on what is beyond the secular, a loftier level of human trait higher than spending time answering Fang's boys' questions about mathematics and mechanical engineering. Years later, in the winter of 1671, Fang Yizhi, then a Chan abbot, was arrested for anti-Qin activities during the reign of the Kanshi emperor. He died while escorted towards the Guangdong province. Once in the Middle Kingdom, Sambiasi had to respond with his best efforts to the historical context, and he decided to help Chinese converts, quote, by getting his hands dirty with politics and diplomacy. Sambiasi was therefore close to the Catholic scholar and Grand Secretary of State Xu Guangqi, who provided Sambiasi refuge during anti-Christian persecution. Together, they engaged in true-minded discussions resulting in Sambiasi's treatise, The Humble Considerations on the Soul. Printed in 1624, it explores how to elevate the statues of the soul, anima, orienting it towards the illuminating connection with God. Xu was involved with military affairs because of the expansion of the Manchus and the threat of internal uprisings. Paolo was afraid that a swift collapse of the Ming would impede the spreading of Christianity. Xu Ricci and later Sambiasi operated so that future Catholics would be able to enter upon the leadership of their people. Their words and actions were suggesting that Christianity was a proposal for all nations, China included. This proposal needed to be grounded in local culture with compassion and respect for the native spirituality. Sambiasi believed that a new Han state could emerge, counter the Manchu invasion, and rise from recent ungovernable excesses or chaotic events which had marginalized and wasted talented individuals, including Christian patriots such as his friend Ignazio Su. Sambiasi's mission took him to the major cities of China, and his converts belonged to both the elite and the lower strata of society. By 1622, he had baptized 200 people around Shanghai, one quarter of whom were literati. Several episodes of conversions, healing, and exorcism are attributed to Sambiasi, and they need, I think, better analysis from Jesuit experts. Around 1638, because of a request by two young scholars, he was in the city of Yan, an important river port on the Grand Canal. There, Francesco managed to convert three mandarins, 27 other literati, and 120 locals, including the mother of one of the young inviters. She turned Catholic, quote, since the long-bearded Sambiasi had appeared to her in a dream right before his visit, end of quote. In 1640, to the benefit of the Shansu Christians, Sambiasi tamed a possessed medium who was talking revelations through a calligraphy brush and claimed to be a better confessor than the missionary. Let's remember that excluding the base of Macau, between 1590 and 1615, about 10 Italian Jesuits were selected for missions in the reclusive Middle Kingdom by the superior general Claudio Acquaviva d'Aragona. Before the terminal lacerations of the rights controversy, the Jesuit enterprise in China was in evolution as the Society of Jesus itself, only 50 years old. Under Acquaviva, the order tripled in size to 550 houses and 15 provinces, numbering 13,000 fathers and coadjutor brothers. Different to an administrative post or a teaching position in Italy, the appointment to the missions in Japan or China offer adventurous Italian Jesuits the chance to conjoin in the conversation of two of the most refined nations of the world. On 9 July 1602, being near the end of his philosophy studies, the 34 years old Alfonso Vagnone, son of the Count of Trofarello and Celle in Piemonte, declared that his soul needed a challenge in China or Japan. So this is Vagnone's words. Now that I've almost reached port in one of my journeys, the desire for a new one increases. A journey much more useful, I hope, both for my own soul and those of others. End of quote. Vagnone, as you know, played a pivotal role in a Jesuit controversy, the term controversy, over the proper Christian terminology for China, a fierce debate which disappointed unconverts. In a letter dated 18 December 1628 to the General Muzio Vitelleschi, a frustrated Vagnone mentioned Sambiasi's good work in the vast province of Henan. According to Vagnone, Sambiasi was an example of tireless Jesuit accommodation. In fact, the chronicle of the prefecture of Kaifeng, the major city of Henan, describes Father Francesco as, quote, a very talented Westerner, remarkably proficient in astronomy. He had won the trust of Henan people, beginning with magistrates and scholars. Initially destined for missions to Japan, Sambiasi's scientific erudition constituted the reason for his station in China. Questing for a common ground with the intelligentsia, Ricci needed to be assisted by a priest with astronomical and mathematical expertise. His confreres could assess the Ming court only if equipped with communication skills comparable with those of the Chinese experts. These skills were useful for disseminating scientific, not superstitious novelties, not alchemy, but Christian science. One of the major accusations for the Jesuits is that they are alchemists and not scientists. Solar eclipses and other significant celestial events were to be monitored, as you know, by the Imperial Bureau of Astronomy. It had been common to involve specialists from India and Persia to help with celestial matters, not predicted eclipses, could be manipulated by anti-government forces when presented to the commonsensical Chinese people. Even through this or that eclipse was sending warnings about the moral decay of the Koran dynasty. Sambiasi was conscious of the perils he was to face entering the Middle Kingdom. Possibly he even knew that the Bureau of Astronomy had hereditary members, some of Islamic faith who, by the nature of their position, had the strength to undermine newcomers. For his first petition, penned in Naples, 6 June 1608, Francesco wrote to General Acquaviva how his good state of mind rested on a selection for the Chinese mission. Quote, my health really depends on my departure for China. End of quote. And this is the document, a following document. In RC, you can see. Then from Lisbon on February 27, 1609, Francesco stated his wish to serve the cross of the Lord with his humble talents whenever there would be perilous missions. I thank our Lord infinitely for having exhorted your lordship to send me to China. I therefore pray your paternity by the grace you have shown me to add a letter to the superior in China, in which it be particularly asked that whenever there are sources of grief or perilous missions to be done, you will call upon me and so fulfill my wishes for the love of God. These are the wishes of a poor man who has placed his talents and dignity in the service of the cross of the Lord. It has been overlooked that the Imperial Encyclopedia, early 18th century, named Sambiasi for his gentlemanly arts as if he were a brilliant scholar bureaucrat of a Han gentry family. The encyclopedia lists only few foreigners for the Ming period. The book of the surnames of all the families living in China includes Sambiasi, Bijinlian, because he was, quote, a great expert from the West with different magical skills, extremely talented at mathematics and at the calculation of the calendar. This is the Imperial Encyclopedia. Certainly, the Imperial Chronicler underlines Sambiasi's positive influence over the gentlemen of the Xianfu County in Henan, where Sambiasi had a base before 1631. The local prefect issued an honorary plaque hung on Francesco's house, reading, quote, this is the great Western scholar of extensive wisdom. Between 1631 and 1643, Sambiasi was at the Nanjing Astronomical Observatory at the suggestion of Xu Guangqi, who wanted him to recalculate eclipses as well as the longitude and latitude of the southern pole. In 1641, he founded a church upon the hill surrounding Nanjing. Over the door of the building, there was a tablet reading, this is the mountain of the guardian angel. The interior was embellished with a large depiction following the European style. It presented the 9 levels of the Christian angels fighting the devils, all precipitated in hell, an image that impressed the converts and any Chinese visitor. Thanks to few remaining prints, we know of a large terrestrial map designed by Sambiasi. 2 versions preserved in the Ghent University Library and in the Biblioteca Vaticana of Roma have a text on the top portion of the edition. It was a gift, and Sambiasi promoted the virtuosity of Catholic scientists in a Chinese elite manner. Francesco worked on this map either around 1639, when he presented maps to the court, or after 1644 for one of the following non-Ming emperors. And this is my point. These monarchs alternated, as you know, according to a tangle of events, with as many as 5 suitors. In Sambiasi's map, the astronomical system is centered on the Earth. The world is specified to be round and not square. China is the country of the glorious center without reference to the ruling dynasty that fell in Beijing by 25 April 1644. The dynastic vagueness might indicate a date after 1640. In my opinion, the map was designed for the Ongguan Emperor, ruling June 1644, June 1645, who summoned Sambiasi to Macau on 29 April 1645 for announcing trades with the Portuguese. At the beginning of the year of the rooster, 28 January 1645, 15 February 1646, during a happy day of the spring, Ongguan wrote about Francesco as a European vassal named Fang Yizhi. And this is the translation. He observed, the European minister serves God with a sincere heart. He seeks his personal perfection with diligence. Is faithful, fair, simple, and consistent. Is universally knowledgeable and understands how to solve all problems. This Chinese document of great importance is preserved in the Arsi and shows Italian notes by Sambiasi. This is his writing to explain the lettering. What seems of signal importance is the intersection of missionary, scientific, and diplomatic interest in Sambiasi's homage to a Chinese ruler. He presented the emperor with auspicious tributes, as we learn from a memorial to the throne, pen contemporary to the man, to the donation. I made a map of heaven. This is Sambiasi with a stand, and a map of the earth with a stand, which I offer to your majesty with the utmost respect. There are some other gifts as my tribute, an harpsichord, a pipe organ, a telescope, 4 glass lamps, 6 western candlesticks, 1 convex lens, an hourglass, 1 white parrot. The cultivated instrument might be useful for the ritual music system. End of quote from the memorial to the throne. Sambiasi was describing gifts to a monarch facing both an invasion and a collapse of the national economy. The ritual music system was auspicious for a stable government, and the Jesuits showed that he was accustomed to the rituals of power. With a poignant cultural reference and meaningful tokens, Francesco was wishing for the stability of the empire. The original maps were supported by 2 wooden stands, or rather integrated within 2 screens. Sambiasi was emulating the 2 silk screens recomposing the atlas that Matteo Ricci designed for 1 leaf. Most of all, Sambiasi declares his sympathy for a new sovereign. Hence, it is difficult to date the document on 1639, as written by others, because the Shenzhen emperor died 1644. So here are Sambiasi line. I have been anticipating to humbly salute your majesty as the new emperor. Therefore, I prepare some tributes as well as my humble suggestions. I'm trying to help your majesty to reconstruct the country and to have an epoch of peace and prosperity. Although I'm just a rustic man, I have studied deep into this matter to acquire the utmost knowledge. All my life I've served God and loved my fellow human. I've tried to cultivate the moral character to lead an honest and clean life. Now that you have ascended to the imperial throne with wisdom, courage, and kindness, your majesty is determined to resurrect the empire. Therefore, your majesty has visited scholars and came in touch with virtuous human beings. You understand the suffering of your people. You intend to revitalize the military power and to promote education, which are measures well known to all, even me, a humble servant for a faraway land. Sambiasi, in the memorial, suggests 4 cardinal points of action. We shall correct the calendar as an homage to your heavenly mandate. We shall locate new mineral deposit to have more money for a better management of the military supply chain. To benefit from the taxation of maritime trades, we shall increase mercantile relations with Western companies. We shall buy Western guns for better defending the state. Father Francesco, this is me, was writing about the quest for silver and gold deposit in the south of China, the necessity obsession of the epoch. Minerals are the gift of the earth. But we do not know, we do not know how the mineral veins go. Blind mining would only waste time and money. I know many informative European books that cover universal knowledge from astronomy, geography, agriculture, hydrology to modern fine arts and more. I will make them available to you. In such book, we could find different indication to understand different minds. It's best to go to Macau to learn from experts and translate their works. Sambiasi's work for the Nanjing Observatory and put him in contact with Shi Kefa, the Grand Minister of War. She was born in Jiangsu, and perhaps he had already heard of Sambiati's reputation there. He was appointed to run the ministry by July 1643 and soon commissioned Francesco to Macau, September 1643. The Jesuit was to ask the Portuguese for gunners to train Ming officials. The request was granted in December, and with an offer of a single Macanese specialist. By then, Sambiasi instead was in Guangzhou with three gunners from Macau waiting to take him to Shikafa. Sambiasi was not new to this kind of minor diplomacy. Around 1619, Xu Guangqi planned of leading some legates, including Sambiasi, to seek the military aid of the Koreans against the Manchus. Ultimately, the delegation was cancelled. Novel fortification, stationary artillery, and armaments were crucial to counter the Manchus. The matter was 20 years old. A group of Catholic courtiers, prominently Xu Guangqi, Li Jizhao, and their protege Ignazio Sum, petitioned the Dragon Throne to use Wenceslas military technology. They wished to summon Macanese architects, ballistic experts, and seasoned gunners. Originally, these reports aimed at a better defense of Beijing and of the strategic passes along the northern frontier. In the stormy hours of Sambiasi's memorial, such tests were to save Nanjing. In his eyes, Western artillery is useful because it is manufactured using the most refined copper and iron. These cannons are made with extremely delicate craftsmanship. I also suggest Your Majesty to order the most important state departments to select some Chinese people to learn the new guns and have them through the formulas of making gunpowder and how to use it properly. This might be effective to defeat and destroy the enemy in the future. Let me rush to Macau immediately with your order. I will translate the mining industry books in all details and visit the best gunsmiths. Then I will return as soon as possible to report to Your Majesty regarding those Western mining experts and Western generals who are good at artillery. I pray that Your Majesty would invite them in your empire and give them these stipends and food supplies they ask for so that they could arrive in the capital without delay. I know that the situation is not good now, so I can only use my modern strength and enthusiasm, hoping to achieve some small results. With a heart full of reverence, your humble servants, Sambiasi. Francesco Sambiasi Memorial is of importance for the history of Macau because he proposed to the Ongguan emperor to ease trading relations with the Lusitanian businessmen who operated at the Canton fairs. The businessmen of Macau, who were once allowed to trade in Guangdong, have paid taxes for a century. They've been loyal and obedient citizens for a long time. Occasionally, due to disputes with some intermediaries, the trade with the province was blocked. Since the state terminated the private commercial activity, 9/10 of the trade benefits went to the profiteers, and only 1/10 was destined to the imperial treasury. If this businessman could take residence in Guangdong again, the province administration office would control their transactions so that taxes could be increased largely every year, and the national treasury will be enriched. In the same report, Sambiasi asked permission to bury the Portuguese Jesuit João Rodrigues in Macau. A true protagonist of the Jesuit mission in Asia, Rodrigues played a crucial role in the negotiation with the Ming. One should also remember that Rodrigues, hoping to see the development of a common catechism for the Japanese and the Chinese converts, dismissed the use of Mandarin words such as Tianshi for the angels or Shandi to denote the name of the Lord. In this respect, Sambiasi, Vagnon, and others were on the opposite side of Rodriguez. But I will not enter now in the term controversy, which is too long. Sambiasi's requests were well received by the emperor. The imperial decree states that the monarch's order for Francesco to work in cooperation with the deputy capital censor Liu Ruojin, and this is the decree. According to the imperial decree, as soon as the sea ban is lifted with Macau, Francesco Sambiasi and Liu Ruojin should take the imperial decree at sea for discussing matters related to the import and export trade with Macau. Father Rodriguez is allowed to be buried in this land of Macau. The astronomy plate withstand and other tribute objects from Sambiasi have been accepted, checked, and registered by the Imperial General Secretary Si Lijian. End of quote. Sambiasi established amicable contacts with the prominent relatives of the Wanli Emperor. 1620 or 1623, he met Wanli's grandson, Zhu Yuzong, the above-mentioned Hongguan Emperor. They encounter in Kaifeng at the opulent residence of his father, Zhu Shansu, the favorite son of Wanli, sentenced to death by Li Jizheng, the leader of a great peasant uprising. Shansu was killed in the public square in his fiefdom of Luoyang. His body, boiled in deerskin, was said to be eaten by Li himself, according to Martino Martini. With the approval of his superior, his friend Giulio Aleni was the Jesuit vice provincial for the south of China. Since 1641, Sambiasi was nominated Mandarin and ambassador to Macau. In 1645, traveling from Nanjing to Guangzhou and then to Macau, Francesco actually negotiated between the Portuguese and the authorities of Guangzhou. On behalf of Hongguan, he announced the suspension of import and export taxes and free access for Macanese traders. They could also build warehouses as well as churches in Guangdong. This deal was confirmed by the Longhu Emperor. By 1645, the Qin armies had entered the Yangtze River. The emperor fled to the city of Wuhu, where he was captured on June 15. According to Martino Martini, once deported to Beijing, Hongguan was strangled with the Manchu bowstring torch. Hongguan died before Sambiasi's arrival in Macau. His successor and great-uncle Longhu, on the throne for 15 months between 1645 and 1646, confirmed Francesco as imperial ambassador. On August 18, 1645, Zhu Yuzhen, former prince of Tang in Henan, received the heavenly mandate. He was a man tempered by disputes with his relatives. He had no concubines, trusting only in his first consort, Xiao Yixiang. His dominion was consolidated in Fukien, where the Jesuits, the Dominicans, and the Franciscans had made proselytes. At the same time, Zhu Yizhi, the Prince of Lu, had proclaimed himself regent and ruled in Zhejiang. Moreover, on the coast, the Christian for some time, warlord Nicolas Iquan Gaspard aka Genjilong had become extremely powerful, and his ambition limited the influence of Longhu. Sambiasi helped Zhu Yizhen, an cousin of Wanli, between 1636 and 1644. Yuzhen was confined and often tortured in a special resident prison in Fengyan, now Anhui province, by order of his nephew, the Chongzhen Emperor. The Ming dynasty had built at Fengyan, the hometown of their first ruler, Zhu Yuanchang, a notorious high-wall prison still existing, destined for the rebellious members of the Ming clan. It was situated near the Yuanzhang's mausoleum. The accusation to Zhu Yuzhen was his ambition for becoming a military leader or the prominent military leader of China, notwithstanding the great Ming law. This law ordered the non-hereditary relatives of the sovereign, such as the lords at Tang, could not raise armies of their own or support generals of their trust. Several times Eugene tried to lead militias to fight with the Manchus. He only succeeded in countering a revolt of peasants before being imprisoned by his nephew in 1636. It all ended on April 25, 1644. Chongzhen, aided by a single eunuch, hanged himself on Coal Hill behind the Forbidden City, right before Beijing fell into the hands of Li Jizhen, who created the ephemeral dynasty of Shun, thwarted by the Qing. Amnesty by Hongguang, Prince Tang's ambition remained that of countering the Qing. According to his retrospective propaganda, he was to emulate Zhu Yuanzhang, who had won over the alien monarchy of the Yuan. This ambition destiny prompted Long Hu to accept the throne while in Fuzhou, even though he realized he was to deal with Genji Long, that I mentioned before, who imposed on the new monarch his own distinctive agenda for the coast. The sincere friendship between the Long Hu emperor and Father Sambiasi is mentioned by Jesuit Pietro Canevari in a letter of 4 April 1647 to the provincial Francisco de Roa, and Antonio da Gueva in his Carta Annuas da Cina. Canevari highlighted that the emperor had granted Sambiasi with the permission to build new churches wherever he chose. It was a diplomatic success. Even da Gueva reports illuminates Father Francesco's smart diplomatic activity between 1645 and 1646. Thanks to da Gueva and another Portuguese reference, anonymous and undated, we learn that Sambiasi had amazed the Macanese with a spectacular entrance. He had arrived at Macau sporting a tunic adorned with the imperial dragons and escorted by a strong Chinese battalion of 3,000 soldiers aboard imperial ships flying silk red flags bearing the cross of the Lord. The Europeans in Macau were once again hoping for a future conversion of the dragon on its throne. June 15, 1646, Father da Gueva specified that the friendship between Long Hu and Sambiasi was well established, in fact, antigua. He had started around 1623. The Italian was in Kaifeng to ground the Jesuit station, and the lords at Tang had heard of his, quote, reputation among members of the imperial family and the mandarins. The fief of the Tang was in Nanyang, 6 or 7 days away from Kaifeng. End of quote. Sambiasi lived in the Tang's mansion for 50 days, quote, enjoying the comfort and the honor of a prince. End of quote. On this occasion, Francesco presented Zhu Yuzhen with a distinguished token of gratitude. It was a portable altar decorated with an image of the Savior, an image of the Savior in a curious retablo. This is da Gueva. I am inclined to think that this figure of Christ, donated by Sambiasi to the Prince of Tang, was a tablet showing the garb of the Salvator Mundi, painted for Matteo Ricci by Giovanni di Niccolò, S.J., this lost work inspired Giovanni's pupils, such as the Jesuit brother Jacopo Niwa, whose Salvator Mundi painted on copper is now in Tokyo. Later portable altars with a screen-like design were made by Japanese craftsmen for the Chinese market, framing paintings of Jesus, Mary, or the saints. With Jesuit pride, da Gueva narrates about Sambiasi's efforts to free Zhu Yuzhen, or at least to improve his captivity, since the good man, says da Gueva, was, quote, locked up in a cage. Francesco risking his name at court for the illustrious hostage used all his relationships and strength to try to rescue him, end of quote. he established secret contacts, quote, with a good friend, the general governor of Henan, a real amigo of Sambiasi. Daguerre continues. The character of these, Dumas, Three Musketeers, like governor, could be identified with Liu Zhenfei. He was in charge of Henan and had jurisdiction over Fenian, where the Prince of Tang was imprisoned. According to Shao Tinzai in the Chronicles of the Southeast, which is a book of the early Qing dynasty, Lu protected the future Long Hu because he was impressed, quote, by the Prince of Tang rectitude, cultivation, and stoicism, end of quote. Sources indicate that Zhu Yuzhen was an impressive man, tall and with a martial voice, evidently well read. In gratitude, Long Hu elevated Lu Zhenfei to the office of Minister of War. Lu was in good terms with Zhen Zhilong since 1633, when they fought the Dutch fleet and the Hokkien pirate Liu Xiang. So it is possible, or so I say in the book, in another small paragraph, that Sambiasi had met these people already. Following Daguerre's report, after Zhu Yuzhen was set free aboard an imperial boat, Sambiasi went to meet on the Yangtze River. The two friends had a warm party, Daguerre says, as if they were dear brother. Because of the chaotic transitional power, Eugene was unhappy. Eugene was unhappy with his feudal position and desired the rich fief of Anzhou. Even on this regard, according to Father Dagueva, Sambiasi helped at Hongwan's court, and Zhu Yuzhen gained control over Anzhou. When the city fell to the Qin in July 1645, the prince fled to the Fujian province and at the behest of powerful courtiers ascended to the throne in August. The reign name Long Hu, abundant and martial, was a patriotic project in itself to revive the defunct dynasty. Sambiasi homaged the new son of heaven, his amigo, in Fuzhou, where the court had moved. We also know that between July and August 1646, Francesco was Long Hu's legate to Macau, seeking military support from the Portuguese. To thank Sambiasi, Long Hu gave him the permission, as I said, to erect a church in Guangzhou. I'm coming to the end. On January 4, 1646, the emperor composed a poem in honor of his foreign brother, recalling Francesco's mercy in his favor. Here is a non-poetic translation of the emperor verses. I want to clarify. This it's for me a very important document on Jesuit influence in China. It was published by Monsignor Fan Hao and in Chinese only, and then sort of forgotten about. So by my only, let's say, I'm very glad that also with my wife we managed to resituate all of these different little notes. But this is a note of great importance. And this is the word of the emperor. The world is the same year after year. Sun and moon are renewed every day. You are a friend of mine, and we think alike, like brothers. I don't think that poor Matteo Ricci ever enjoyed such a treatment. Naturally, we could have a good monarch subject relationship. I feel compassion for your trouble of being a foreigner. Your heart was filled with kindness and mercy to rescue me. By my enthronement, I hope to be able to pacify the world. Finally, I could be the emperor of all China. The poem had a poignant introduction. We understand that Sambiasi had written an auspicious ode for the new Chinese ruler. To reply to my friend Francesco Sambiasi, a noble and refined man who had presented me with the ode for one who will cultivate himself, put family in order, govern the state, and pacify the world, I composed an imperial poem with this introduction. Francesco Sambiasi is an outstanding Western man with an extraordinary morality, indeed a noble and refined person for China. In 1636, I've been deprived of my nobility title and treated as a commoner, imprisoned in a harsh jailhouse, and you had mercy for me. You believe in my innocence, and you cry out the injustice that was done to me. You have tried your best to defend me, and you appealed to the governor. Finally, my wrongful treatment was clear. In the fall of 1644, I've been liberated, and in the spring of 1645, we have met again. Now that I was enthroned in Fukien, you have accepted the order to serve my court. You have sent me a note of admonishment. My old friend, you are just the same as you always have been towards me. In 1646, the Qin army took over Zhejiang and the whole region of Fukien. By then, many Han generals and soldiers had joined the invading forces, adding to the Chinese who had defected to the Manchus up to 1644. As Prince Lu fled to the sea, Long Hu himself was defeated and died at Tinzhou, western Fukien, on October 6, 1646. Yongle, the new emperor, continued to protect native and foreign Christian subjects, also because his stepmother, Xiao Zhen, converted to Catholicism with the name of Helen. In December 1646, Sambiasi was again in Macau. He persuaded the Portuguese to send 300 arquebusiers to defend the fortress of Guilin. They were led by Nicolau Ferreira, a young Chinese Catholic from Macau. This unit included several Africans. They joined the infantry ranks of the Catholic general Zhao Liang and fought with great valor in June 1647. When the Qin armies attacked Guangzhou in 1647, Francesco Sambiasi was badly wounded. His physical sufferings lasted until 1649. He was buried in a piece of land donated to the Jesuits by the Longhu Emperor. The commemorative plaque over his tomb referred to the compilation of his philosophical treatise in Chinese. This is really the last mark of the dangerous or perilous missions that Francesco Sambiasi has set his soul and mind to face, entering the complexity of China. Many years had passed since he had arrived in the Middle Kingdom in 1610. Looking at his life and work, one could say that there was not a single missionary model for late Ming China, and it would be futile to search for one because of the variant factors that I tried to mention in the previous slides. Certainly, the pressure of centrifugal forces, persecution, intergenerational cohabitation between Jesuits of different generation, differences between religious orders, Jesuits, Franciscan, Dominicans, and subgroups, warfare, loss of livelihood of the missionary exert a strain on missionary cohesion, shadowing, therefore, the merits of many people, including Francesco Sambiasi, a true friend of China. Many thanks for your attention.